So I will now turn to Mr. Cram for 5 minutes. The floor is yours.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I would like to welcome the witnesses from the CRTC to the committee today. When I go to the mall to buy a cell phone, there's always a Rogers store and a Telus store and a Bell store. There's also a SaskTel store because I'm from Saskatchewan. But there's no AT&T, there's no Verizon, there's no T-Mobile. Why don't we open up the Canadian cell phone market to American competition?
First, I'd have to say that it's not the role of the CRTC to set government policy, but rather to regulate the Canadian industry. But I can offer you a comment if you wish, and that would be first that the market is not entirely closed. It is open in certain areas, and with respect to wireless, for example, carriers could come in as long as they don't have more than 10% market share. But you're correct if you're saying they can't come in and, for example, buy a Telus or a Rogers, which may or may not be in the public interest. There would be other foreign investment reviews. But what we do have is what we are responsible for at the CRTC is to ensure that Canadian carriers that meet the regulations are indeed Canadian owned and controlled. That's as far as our jurisdiction goes.
And when you think of all of the laws and regulations that the CRTC has to implement, if we were to open up the marketplace to more foreign competition or more American competition, how big an undertaking would that be from the CRTC's perspective?
Again, I can only offer a comment. It would be a decision of the CRTC. But what I would say, and obviously well known to all of you, Canada's a large country geographically with a small population. We have facilities built out by several companies and now increasingly a number of new regional players and hopefully more again in the future. A company coming in and building in Canada will face all of the same challenges that are faced by, for example, the new regional entrants. It is costly to build a new network and costly to establish a brand and awareness and so on. But if they did so, we would have more competition. The Commission's approach is to make sure that we enhance competition that does exist today in Canada, and that's why we introduced MVNOs that will help support the emerging competitors to better compete with the large three national players who are dominant.
If an American carrier wanted to enter the Canadian marketplace, is there any reason why they could not be treated as any other regional carrier? And can you speak to some of the implications of that?
Not in fully my area of expertise. If they were operating spectrum, they would have to get spectrum licenses from the industry department. If they were starting as a new carrier, they would have to abide by various CRTC regulations, providing alerting, providing 911 and so on. But otherwise, they'd be treated as any other entrant, provided they had less than 10% market share.
And I know when driving a car in Canada or the United States, all of our speedometers are in kilometers, and in the United States, they're in miles. Can you speak to any particular technical challenges that may exist if American carriers wanted to enter the Canadian marketplace?
None that leap to mind, and I could turn to my colleague to see if he wants to correct me when I finish. But essentially, the technologies that are being deployed in Canada are largely the same as those in the United States. Most of the major vendors are the same. Most of the standards are the same. So there's nothing obvious to me that is significantly different between the U.S. and Canada. Phil, am I missing something that?
No, I wouldn't add anything.
Thank you.
And could you speak to what effects this would have on competition in the marketplace and prices for consumers?
I'm not sure I can. Obviously, more competitors generally intensifies competition, assuming they're effective, and that would improve competition and presumably help lower prices. That's exactly what we're trying to do with the current the framework that we introduced last April.
Thank you, Mr. Scott and Mr. Cram.